This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, economic students. Professor George here. I am making a short video tutorial about using the three basic indicators that we learned in this class to assess the health of the economy. This information is not in your textbook, so it's important that you watch this and take notes. At the beginning of the class, I asked you all, how do you think the economy's doing? When most people answer that question, they answer it based on their own life situations. You know, how their family's doing, how the people in their community are doing. One of my goals for this class is for you to have a sense of how the economy is doing. It's really complicated, but here's a good way to start. When you go to the doctor will weigh you, take your blood pressure, listen to your heart. Three of the basic things that we look at for the economy is the rate of GDP growth, the unemployment rate, and the rate of inflation. Those three indicators are used to kind of figure out how the economy is doing. One of the main goals of this class and for policymakers is they collect all this economic data and they try to figure out where the economy is currently on the business cycle. Once you figure out where it is currently on the business cycle, then you can get an idea if the appropriate policy now or in the coming months will be to put on the gas to give the economy a boost because it's doing not so good, or to put on the brakes to like cool it down a little bit because it's overheating. So those are the goals of trying to figure out what to do. Now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to share a screen with you that I've already got all this information up. Sharing my screen with you. Here we go. Awesome. All right. So as you can see, this is just an approximation that I just drew of the business cycle. The business cycle has peaks at the very top. Here, let me get a tool that I can use. Peaks at the very top and troughs at the very bottom. This is contraction, and then this is expansion. So, you know, one of the goals of fiscal and monetary policy, here, let me get a drawing tool. One of the goals of fiscal and monetary policy is to kind of do this. It's kind of to make the lows not quite so low and the highs not quite so high. That's kind of the goal of fiscal and monetary policy. They use different tools, but they have the same goal. The goals of fiscal and monetary policy are to have stable prices, full employment, and sound growth. And most important is they want stability. Now let's take a look at our three indicators. The first indicator that we're going to talk about here's a way that you can remember it. Remember 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. You can't know how well the economy is doing unless you understand how far it is from the target. So the rate of inflation, that's mostly measured by the CPI. The rate of inflation, the target rate of inflation is 2%. Right now in our economy, hold on to your hat. Holy moly, we have 8.6. That's a really high level of inflation. And that's, I think the last time we had it this high was in 1981. That's the year I graduated from high school, a long time ago. So at the top of the business cycle, there's an indicator that I would call it like in the hot zone, right? In the zone that people are going to look at. When you're at the peak of the business cycle, the thing that makes the policymakers want to act is inflation. That's what we have right now. This is recorded in September of 2022. So they're all trying to put on the brakes because we have inflation of 8.6. Our next target, our next indicator, is the GDP growth rate. They measure this in quarters. The goal is around 3%. We want to have around 3% growth in GDP. The first quarter of 2022, January, February, March, was negative 1.5. 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth is the official definition of a recession. So we still have to see January, February, March, April, May, June. Sometime in July, we'll get the second quarter. We'll see. Hopefully, this is going to be a positive number. I'm not so sure. The next indicator we look at is the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate is about, the target rate is about 4%. We learned this in class, that structural and frictional unemployment are unavoidable. They're going to happen. It's the cyclical unemployment that we really want to be aware of, because cyclical unemployment is unemployment that happens as the economy hits a downturn. Excuse me. So 4% is the target rate of unemployment. Right now, we're sitting pretty at about 3.6. So given these numbers, it's hard to say what's going on. Usually when you're at the peak, that means that you have a great economy. It's an awesome economy. Well, we have negative 1.5 GDP growth. Negative 1.5 GDP growth would make you feel you're down here. So COVID has really messed with the economy. So it's hard for economists and you to take a sense of where we are. But I want it to be that when you're driving down the road 5 years from now and you hear on the news or wherever that the unemployment rate is 9%, I want you to know that that's really bad. Or you hear that the inflation rate is 1%. 1% is bad too. You'd think a 1% inflation would be good, but it's not. That's too anemic. It's not a very strong economy. So we have these targets for a reason: 2, 3, 4. What did I write over here? So yes, at the peak and at the trough, you're going to have an indicator that's going to make the policymakers feel like they have to act. At the peak, it's inflation. Right now, we're fighting inflation. And in the trough, it's the unemployment rate. So this is just a short video to help you understand that where we want the economy to be and then how we can get us to get there. COVID and the pandemic and everything associated with it, the supply shortages, the excess demand, it's all kind of thrown it all off. If I asked you, if I could ask you all kinds of questions and then you could make a guess about where we are on the business cycle. I think I'll do that for the questions that go with it. I hope that you've learned something. Go home and talk to the people in your life about 2, 3, 4, see if they can understand these basic numbers to help you understand the economy.